It's true, isn't it? When we look at this prophecy in the book of Micah, it's very exciting because it portrays to us what's actually happening among God's people today. We know that although in the new world there will be a tremendous unity displayed by God's people, chapter 4 of Micah is actually portraying what's happening now. And we're involved with this. And we know that because in verse 5 says, at the same time that this unity would be evident, all the peoples will walk each in the name of its God. Well, that's not talking about the new world, is it? It's talking about the time we're living in now. Well, what is it that helps all of Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide to be so united and not to be involved with the wars of this world? Well, one of the things that helps us is our Christian neutrality. What do we mean by neutrality? We mean not taking sides in political issues. Of course, we take sides with Jehovah and the kingdom, but with regard to worldly political debates and issues that arise, we don't take sides. Why is this so important? Well, let's turn our Bibles to Revelation chapter 13. Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17. And here it tells us, it puts under compulsion all people, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slaves, that these should be marked on their right hand and on their forehead, and that nobody can buy or sell except a person having the mark, the name of the wild beast, of the number of its name, or the number of its name. What's the point of this verse? Well, of course, we will look forward to seeing how this may turn out in the future and what pressure is put on God's people at that time. But even now, we see the principle here that the political system is wanting to put its mark on us mentally as well as physically. So we see the forehead as well as the hand being involved. So we need to be absolutely certain that we remain neutral with regard to political issues in the world, not only by not being involved actively in the political issues, but also mentally not allowing ourselves to take sides. What are some of the things that perhaps could erode our neutrality? Well, maybe we could mention three things this morning. One is the propaganda that the world puts forward. Now, we have seen what the media says about Jehovah's Witnesses, haven't we? How distorted some of their reports are and how they can paint a negative picture with regard to us. Well, should we expect that they are neutral with regard to other events that they report on? Particularly when there are conflicts between two nations. The media in one particular nation may promote certain ideas about the other nation. We may be affected by that. We may be surprised, perhaps, to visit some other countries that have a different political ideology and be surprised to see how things perhaps were a little different in that country to how it's portrayed by the media in our country. So we need to be careful not to be influenced by the propaganda of this world, particularly media reports and so on. What's another thing perhaps that could cause us to lose a measure of neutrality? Sporting events. Sometimes sporting events are able to achieve certain goals with regard to nationalism. We see the national anthem being played, many of these events. It reminds me, many years ago, when I was in a different country, a friend of mine asked me to record a certain sporting event. I wasn't particularly interested in the event, but because he made this request, I recorded it. And of course, I wanted to make sure that I'd got the last 10 minutes of it. I thought our friendship may be strained if I didn't get the actual last part of the game. When I watched it, it was absolutely exciting, nail-biting finish. Well, after the brother gave me back the videotape, I thought maybe some of the other brothers who would be interested in this sporting event may want to have it rather than just wipe the tape. So I offered it to several. And each one of them said to me, no, thanks. If we had won, perhaps it would be different. Now, what was the problem? As I said to them, were you watching the game or were you taking sides? An interesting concept because here two different nations were involved. So we have to be careful that Even sporting events don't stir up within us certain nationalistic feelings. And perhaps we could take sides with regard to certain events. The third area that perhaps could erode our neutrality are the political promises being made, particularly at election time. Perhaps one of the candidates is from our ethnic background, or perhaps is the same gender as we are. Uh, when we look at the political situation these days with many elections, it seems to be more in the form of entertainment than anything else, with music and very colorful characters. But if we were to say in our heart, I hope that idiot doesn't get into power, are we neutral? Or worse still, if we say, I hope the other person gets into power, well, we need to be careful, don't we? I remember many years ago as a young pioneer in Australia, I was facing the conscription issue, the national call up for the military. At that time, the Vietnam War was being fought. And then there was an election in Australia. And at that time, the party that was trying to get into power said that if they got into power, they would abolish conscription. So now that affected me personally. I remember how hard it was sitting there watching the election results, not to say in my heart, I hope they get in. And then when they got in, not to say, yes. You see, if we personally are affected by some of these political promises, we may violate our neutrality. So, brothers and sisters, let's work hard at remembering that we're no part of this world. We support the best government that could ever rule this earth. And by doing so, we will keep our neutrality and we will keep our unity.